Hey guys, it's Elise and welcome back to My Cupcake Addiction. Today I'm going to make a tutorial based on a shirt that I bought a couple of months ago. Ever since I bought this shirt, which I had to have, I've been trying to think of a really cool idea to come up with so I could wear it in a video. So today I'm going to show you how to do a really fun, simple pastel rainbow effect, and we're going to make a rainbow unicorn cake with some pretty easy methods. The things that you're going to need, I've got a double batch of my perfectly pipeable buttercream frosting, and I've tinted it pale pink, pale yellow, pale blue, and a light red. I've got some white candy melt or white compound chocolate, some gold sanding sugar. I've got some pastel confetti sequins, and I found some really cute little gold edible stars. I've got 4 layers, 1-inch high by 7-inch round layers of vanilla cake, but you can use any cake you like. I want mine to be nice and tall, so I'm going with 4 layers, and I've also got a 9-inch cake board. I didn't have a ruler handy today, so I'm using a scraper, but you can totally use a ruler for this. I've got a snap seal bag, a pair of scissors, and a bread knife. You're going to need to print out the template that I will link to down below of our unicorn topper, and also you'll need a piece of parchment paper. Let's get started. I have my white chocolate melting on a double boiler behind me, and I'm just going to trim off my layers of cake. So I don't want to take too much off these because I don't want my cake to be too much smaller. I like a lighter cake. And just using a serrated edge knife, a bread knife, or a cake leveler if you have one, we're just going to take the top off and then take the bottom off. I do this so that I don't see any of these little brown layers when I actually cut into the cake, because I like to just see all white cake and frosting. This stuff is great for cake pops, by the way. You want to repeat that with all of your cakes, and it pays to just make sure that you're getting them around the same size. So if you need to, just line the two up. I can see this one's a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to trim it to size so that I've got the same size layers in between my cake. It just helps it to look really nice and neat and even. So once your cakes are all carved, you can just stack them up and put them off to the side. We're going to work on the unicorn topper. So I've got my unicorn template, and my white chocolate is now melted and in a snap seal bag. I'm going to cut quite a fine little tip off it. I want this to be quite fine because there's a lot of detail on the edges and the points of our unicorn, and we can cut it a little bit fatter if we want to, but we can't cut it any thinner. So I'm just going to come around the outside edge of my unicorn, holding down my parchment. You can tape it if you're having any trouble with it moving around. Starting with the horn, and then I'm going to outline the mane. As soon as you've got the unicorn part done, you want to shade that in because you don't want your chocolate to start setting before we've got time to sprinkle it with a little bit of our sanding sugar. And the base doesn't really need to be sprinkled with sugar because it's going to go inside the cake. So get the top sorted out, and then we can work on the base. If your unicorn is setting a little bit too quickly, if you're piping a little bit slower than me, you can also let it sort of start to set and grab a hairdryer. Blow a hairdryer on it for literally like 5 seconds, and it will melt that chocolate back down again to make it sticky enough for you to pour on your sprinkles. Hairdryers in cake decorating, who knew? Don't worry too much if that one's not super neat. Don't worry if you feel like it's like a little chunkier in some places. You can see I've got little ripples. Normally I'd give that a tap on the bench, but I don't want to risk spreading the chocolate because I know it's got sprinkles on it. I'm just going to sprinkle away. Cover it in tons of that sanding sugar. You want more than you think that you're going to need. And we'll get rid of the excess once it's set. All right, I'm going to let the top of my unicorn set before I attempt to do the base because I want to make sure that that is going to join properly and it's not going to break apart or have any weak spots. So in the meantime, we can come over to our cake, and it's time to start stacking and layering. I want this to have a bit of a unique kind of a look going on through the middle of it. So I'm going to apply a little bit of frosting to the bottom of my cake board. I'm going to start with blue, and that's just going to stick my cake in place and add a little more frosting to my cake. So I'm going to start with a blob of pink in the center, and then a ring of blue around it, and then a ring of yellow, and then red. You'll notice I'm actually letting my frostings kind of overlap the frosting next to it, because I don't mind if they blend a little bit. That's kind of what this cake's all about. For my outer ring, pick any color, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to go with blue. And then on goes my next layer of cake. Straight down. I'm going to press it down to make sure that it's kind of squishing that frosting out the edges a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time I'm going to reverse it. So I'm going to start in the middle with red. This is a great technique, whether you're using it on a rainbow cake or a unicorn cake, or whether you just wanted it for like a 4th of July cake. There are so many different color combinations that you can use. It's really quite versatile, and it gives you a little bit of something extra when people cut into the cake. My cake is stacked, and as I touch my unicorn, I can feel that it's solid. So I'm going to just gently lift it, and I'm going to tip it. It shouldn't really come off the baking paper, so I'm just going to tip like so, give it a couple of taps and get rid of any of that excess gold dust, and we've got ourselves a beautiful gold sparkly looking unicorn that really didn't take that much time to make. So now I'm just going to pipe on the white chocolate that's going to go inside the cake, and it's going to support the unicorn so it can stand up on top of the cake. But I want it to be quite thick, so I'm going to cut off a little bit more of the bag just to make my piping job easier. And don't worry if this isn't totally neat, it's going to be hidden inside the cake. So I'm making sure that I really get in nice and close to the unicorn's legs. So I've got a nice firm join. Because I don't want to see any of that white chocolate poking up above the cake, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit more just on the very, very top of our stick. And I've also got a toothpick. So if your unicorn has kind of set anywhere where you want a bit more definition, like just here in the little legs, you can just grab a toothpick and just gently flick out any little pieces of sugar. So you've got that nice little definition in the unicorn's legs, feet, and around any edges. The parts that I found it most commonly stuck were just sort of up under our unicorn's neck and then kind of in between her legs. For the rainbow effect on the outside of the cake, I'm going to take my scraper and I'm just going to scrape back this frosting that's kind of poking out around the edges. I've got a bowl I can just scrape it off into. Unfortunately, that's wasted frosting. Although with kids around, I don't think there's any such thing as wasted frosting. Now that is essentially our crumb coat, so I'm going to make sure that I do a good job of just removing any excess crumbs. We've kind of scraped off most of them anyway when you've kind of gone around and done that initial coat, but I don't want one single colour all over this cake. It's going to be a multitude of colours. I'm going to make life a little bit easier on myself, and I'm going to stick my cake on a turntable because that's going to help while I'm doing my little outer rounds. So I'm just going to spin the cake, and I'm just making a nice thick sausage of pink frosting around the bottom. You're essentially dividing your cake into the 4 different colours by just making these little lines. You do want this to be quite thick though, because as we scrape it back, we want to be able to blend 2 colours together, and we want to be able to do that without exposing any cake underneath. Moving on to blue. Make sure that all of your frosting colours are touching each other nicely. And then yellow. And there is a method to my madness for doing the colours in this particular order. And then finally we'll do our red, and red's going to do the whole top of the cake as well, so go crazy with red. I'm going to smooth the top of the cake before I smooth the edges and before I add the last of the red, because I just want to make sure it's nice and even and level. And then on goes the red around the top. What you want to make sure here is that you don't have a shortage of frosting on the outside, because we only really get one shot at scraping it back and creating our blended effect. All right, I'm just going to eyeball my cake and make sure there's nowhere that I can see that's got too little frosting. There's a little patch down here. Other than that, I think it looks pretty good. Make sure that your scraper is really clean. I'm going to give mine a rinse off, and then we're going to create our little blending effect. Clean scraper, thickly iced cake, scraps bowl. We are good to go. So I'm going to take my scraper and I'm going to scrape not too much frosting back into a beautiful line. About halfway, I'm going to scrape back and go again. All right, for a straight striped rainbow layer effect, that's good, but I want to blend my colors. So I'm going to blend my red into my yellow, create like an orange. Then my yellow is going to go into my blue and create a green, and my blue is going to go into my pink and make a purple. So we're going to get all the colors of the rainbow without having to make all those different colored frostings. Very gently and barely taking off any frosting at all this time. I'm just going to run around, and as I do that, they're just going to start spreading together. So I'm just going to go around a couple of times until I'm happy that they're blending nicely. I'm using literally the lightest touch on this at the moment. I don't want to scrape anything off if I can avoid it. I really just want to coax the 2 colors of frosting together. Look at that beautiful, gorgeous graduation of color. And we've only really had to use 4 of our own colors to make all 7 colors. Once you're happy that the sides are scraped and you've got your little mini layers of green, purple and orange going on in between your thicker layers, then you just want to use a scraper or your ruler and just scrape back the top so it's nice and flat and level. Now that I've got my nice flat level rainbow, kind of looks like a watercolor rainbow, I'm going to add some sprinkles to the top of my cake, which kind of brings in all the colors that we've got going on down the outside, on the inside, and just adds that unicorn fun factor, I think. Plus you can't have a cake without sprinkles. It's just wrong. And then some of my little gold stars. I've never used these before, but they're super cute. Oh my God, for a unicorn cake, they're just perfect. Aww. I'm gonna take my bread knife and I'm gonna poke a guide hole down the center of my cake. You're gonna disturb the sprinkles a little bit, but that's okay, we can live with that. So I'm gonna shove them out of the way just a little, and I'm gonna poke a nice straight guide hole. And knowing that my unicorn support's a little bit wider than that, I'm just gonna sort of take it from side to side and make sure that it's gonna be wide enough for my whole unicorn's little support stick to go into. and then out comes the knife. The moment of truth. This is when our cake becomes a unicorn cake. So you just want to gently peel away a unicorn. Be very delicate here. His horn and legs are going to be very fragile. All right, so when you've got your unicorn, be very careful here. And if it breaks, you can stick it back together with a bit more melted white chocolate. It's going to go straight down through our little guide hole. And you'll notice I've got 2 fingers on the top of my little stem, and I'm very gently, very slowly and very carefully pushing directly downwards. Make sure you're not on it all of an angle, because otherwise you're going to snap. Down we go. She's in. Our unicorn cake is done. So incredibly cute. If you want to, you can take just a few more little sprinkles and kind of pile them up to disguise the join where the unicorn is actually meeting the cake, and it kind of looks like she's just jumping out, or he. I don't know, are unicorns boys or girls, or can you get both? You have to brush up on my unicorn knowledge. We made a unicorn cake. I love this. I don't know if as a unicorn trainer I lose marks for eating the unicorn that I'm supposed to be looking after, but this one's going to be too delicious for me not to at least have a little nibble on. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do for 2 new videos every week. And it is Unicorn Week because I want to try and use the shirt again. So make sure you check out my unicorn-inspired rainbow smoothies that are going to come up later in the week. Thanks very much for watching.